This is Mitch, and welcome to the Real Estate Investor Summit podcast. I'm here with the Texas Apartment Association President, Mark Hurley. So, Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Mitch. Thanks very much. Very busy time for all of us.
Yes, it is. I'm sure we have a lot to talk about. First, I got to pay homage to my sponsor, taxfreefuture.com. If you don't have a tax-deferred or tax-free retirement plan, you have no idea the size of the tool belt you are missing in your tool belt. So did I say that right? The size of the tool that you're missing in your tool belt. Check out taxfreefuture.com because you have no idea what your financial advisors are not telling you. All right, there we go. Got the bills paid, Mark. So I don't even know where to start with you because I'm going to bill you as just a big operator, right? That's kind of an understatement. But tell us a little bit about your history because your father immigrated over here, right?
That's right. He started buying properties when he was in Europe, and we lived in Europe in 1985 or 86, I think is when it was. And it was just a few single family homes, very highly leveraged. And I remember one of my first jobs around the age of 15 or 16 was entering in rents when we were living in the Middle East at the time. And wondering why they were all negative, why after you put in the income and the expenses, it was all negative. And the reason was because as soon as he'd bought everything, the market crashed in Texas. And he had houses that were worth nothing that the interest rates were 16, 18% on. And around 90, but he didn't know that you could walk away from those things because we were living in Europe and it was unheard of to walk away from debt. So he kept paying on them. In 1994, because I had gone to university in the States, he came over for about 6 months to try and manage those houses and noticed that all around him were single family homes that were about $9,000 a single family home that would rent for about $500 a month. And he couldn't believe it because the streets were full of people and people were renting these things, but they were so cheap. And so he decided not to get rid of the ones he had, but to kind of double down. And so started buying these $9,000 single family homes, as many as he could lay his hands on. And we were still fixing those ones that he'd bought in 94, 95 with every penny he had in 1999. We're still working outside, putting up siding, roofs, things like that. Because he'd bought so many distressed homes. And then we started to buy apartments.
See, so same old adage, you buy when it's down, right? And so was it down at the time or houses were just that cheap at the time?
It was down at the time. He always said that if we'd come in 2 years earlier, we would have been many times bigger company than we were. He got in right at in the last few years of when it was really down. 91, 92 was when it was really, really bargains. They were bargains in 94, but.
Yeah. So you guys have been in the business for at least 2 generations. Does it go back any further than that, or is it 2 generations?
2 generations. My dad was a poor Irishman from a little village in Ireland, homeless for a while when he first moved to London. Had a bed that he shared. He had it in the day and someone else had it at night, and made himself, what he eventually became from there.
Well, he's very, very, very successful man. And it took a village probably to keep up with him because he did all kinds of things everywhere. But I want to stick to the subject of apartments. By the way, why is it such a common theme that a lot of the most successful people have slept on the floor for long periods of time? Why do you think that is?
I think that adversity is probably one of the greatest teachers a person can have in their long-term business life. And I say that because my dad was always creating adversity for me and for all of us that worked with him, the village, as you put it. And he went through it. And so I think if you have a combination of somebody who learns from adversity, who wants to continuously improve themselves, and who knows how to work hard, you really have some keys to success.
I got it in my mind that there is no neutral. You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards. You cannot, there is no such thing as neutral. You want to park your money and I just want to park my money and be neutral. It's going backwards every second. You know, if that money's not growing, it's going backwards. Inflation or the powers that be or the resources that are needed just to stay in place, like just to sleep, we have to breathe. There is no neutral. You know, breathing is burning energy.
I agree. There's that saying, and I believe in it. It's proven true. Either you're growing or you're dying. I would say that, we buy most of our properties in bargain times, but because we feel like we need to constantly be growing, we will take less of a return and still keep buying small amounts, even when prices are very high, because of that adage, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah. So, I do lots of little deals, and we were talking right before the show here, and you were talking about how you believe in consistent growth, and I'm going to ask you about some other things later, more keys to your success. But one of the things you said was consistent growth, but it's not big leaps and bounds, and I truly believe in that. Because you can learn to systematize and keep up with what you have when you're inching along. And if you make some mistakes or if you get in a bad time where you really shouldn't be buying anything at all, but you buy a few, it's a whole lot different than if you go out and buy 2,000 apartments or something. So what's small in the apartment business though? You say like consistent growth in the apartment business, like what's a small deal in an apartment business for y'all?
Well, our smallest apartment community is 33 apartments, and our largest was 300. We sold our first property for the first time, our first property ever last year, because it was in Fort Worth, and that was 300. Our biggest property now is 235. And so that's kind of the band. And then we do a lot of single family homes still, because when things become too expensive, we keep growing through the purchase of the single family homes. But one of my dad's big lessons to me, and he used to say it over and over again, is, the way you do well in business, or the way we've done well in business, is to buy a unit and make a small profit on that unit and repeat it many times. And we never wanted to, and the small consistent growth aspect of this has made it manageable and not too risky, and it's done over a long period of time, and it's amazing what compound interest like that can do.
Yeah, well, same like with, my forever play is storages. I like to buy boat storages on dry land, dry storage and self storage or mini storage for household goods. And it's amazing. Because I remember my first set was in 1991, and I had 13 little boat stalls, right in front of this park by the lake where I live. And those rents were like $35 a month. And now those same places are renting for $100 a month. And my debt has consistently gone down. Of course, I didn't have any debt on that one because it was like $8,000 is what I paid for the whole thing. But all the units, as the rents are in typical times are always inching up. I mean, they might take some dips, but they're always inching up. And then the debt's always going down if you have debt. And the gap keeps getting bigger and bigger, and the cash flow keeps getting larger and larger. And that's what I like about the forever play. I can buy houses and fix them up and flip them. I can buy houses and sell or finance them. But all those things go away, and I have nothing to do with when they go away. The flip, I sell the house, it's done, it's over. But the note, it can get paid off at any time by the note creator, and so the only thing I really have control over is my long-term plays. And the same thing with the apartments. So you become president of the Texas Apartment Association in what, 2019?
Yes, 2019.
How does that happen?
By the way, I'm going to be the longest serving president of the Texas Apartment Association thanks to coronavirus, because my term has been extended. I was supposed to be done now. That being said, that happens, I joined the Apartment Association to learn from other people in the business. There's so many different aspects to this business. And, I wanted, and it's a great resource as well. But if to get knowledge outside of, your island, I suppose that was a great way for me to do it. So I joined the local apartment association and got on there, went to some of the committee meetings. Somebody asked me to be on their board. I then became president of the local apartment association. Then you start to attend Texas Apartment Association meetings, and I got onto their executive committee, and then you become an officer, and then you become president. It's actually about a 10-year process.
Okay, doesn't happen overnight. Like anything else that's great, doesn't happen overnight. And you answered the question I was going to ask is why? Why? But just reiterate, why?
Because, you're finding, you get to the point where you're surrounded by a lot of successful people that work in our industry, and they all have different goals. And so there are different types of business models within our industry, and you can learn and get knowledge. They're basically all a great set of teachers. And then when you get to the state level, they're from all over the state, and then you're part of the national level, and you see different models from all over the nation.
I mean, there has to be more to it than just your ego or, having a plaque on the wall that says president of anything, because you're a busy man. And I'm sure being president of this association doesn't help you on your time schedule. I mean, it's got to be tough. How do you handle your full-time business life and then this being the president of the Texas Apartment Association?
I think it's the same way you build a business. You learn to handle it a little bit at a time, and with experience, you get to know how to deal with these things, step by step, and what's the next thing to do. So the other thing about it is, especially if you're in a family business, it's very valuable because, I became head of our company because of my father. What I've managed to do within the apartment association, I've managed to do by myself, not because I inherited it. And so that was important for my confidence too, as well as the fact that it's an invaluable tool being able to lead people and being chosen to lead people, not because you pay them, but because they've decided to follow you, because it's volunteers. So I work in it went from 26 single family homes that were highly indebted to thousands of apartments and houses over the course of 25 years. It's an amazing build, but we don't have the corporate structure and the political machinations that an apartment association has. So I learned a lot about corporate structure and politics and all those things that come along with that. And, internal politics and lobbying through the apartment association.
So I'm a member of the Texas100.org, and we are created to raise money for lobbyists to help control or regulate or oversee or help try to guide the laws and regulations for creative real estate investors. And so it's a whole nother world. It's like, I don't know, I'm like a fish out of water up there because I'm not used to the politics. I have my own family run business, and we get to do kind of whatever we want to do or bend it however we want to bend it. And we try to, but up there, it's just a whole nother game. And I'm not really sure, well, I'm not cut out for it, but that's why I'm there to raise money to get lobbyists and people that are cut out for it to go represent our industry, And that's what the Texas Apartment Association does also. It's probably a big watchdog or watch group, right?
Well, yes, right now it's falling on, right now throughout Texas, we're seeing, eviction moratoriums. We're seeing 60-day grace periods before even giving a notice to vacate being introduced. We're seeing property taxes, rising in a time when we have a disaster on our hands, and it falls on the Texas Apartment Association to go and do the best that it can for the rental community in Texas. And it's 15 million residents that all this will affect. Texas TAA is looked on with and has a big responsibility in all of this.
So how has Corona affected the apartment community?
we were seeing a lot of laws being instituted by cities. Some of them may be unconstitutional. 60-day grace periods before you can give a notice to vacate is an example of that. But collections overall have not been as bad as we initially thought they might be or initially feared. In April, the average delinquency in Texas was about 10 to 12%, which is probably, I don't know what the average is on a normal day, probably 2 to 5%. So not that much more above the average. May actually collections have been a little bit better, probably because unemployment benefits have kicked in and stimulus checks have been arriving and PPP loans have hit businesses. The fear is what will happen when the stimulus checks and the unemployment benefits run out in a few months' time. And so we're always worried about the next month. And one of the biggest REITs in the country, I asked him, what are you thinking? And he goes, we're just planning it 20 days at a time.
Yeah, it's the only thing you can do. It's kind of unprecedented what's going on. I mean, it's unprecedented what's going on. Never seen this before. The weird thing is like, I'm in the seller finance business, so I sell all my houses on 30-year fixed mortgages. My people have a lot more at stake in the game. They have at least 10% down. A lot of them put 12 or 15 or 20 or 25% down. Some of them put a little less than 10%, but they had to fix the whole house up where they might have put another $30,000 of their sweat and labor and materials and more money in. So we're noticed barely a dip. But we're worried about the same thing. People got their money. Maybe they had a little bit of reserves. Hopefully, a lot of Americans will learn that you have to put something away for a rainy day. There's too many people that can't make it 30 days even. And so our owner finance business hasn't really seen a problem yet, and my storages have not seen a problem. I have about 1,600 doors there in the storage facility. I haven't seen a problem there yet, knock on wood, but I'm hoping it's going to pass pretty soon, but it seems like it just keeps dragging on and on and on.
It does, and the economic aspects of this will probably drag, this is probably just the tip of the iceberg, because the economic aspects of this will probably drag on for a lot longer. I don't know how you put 33 million Americans back to work and without having that cash in the system for things to get back to normal. And if you've got a 10 or more percent GDP drop, and the average growth rate is 2% to 3% in the year, your figures to get back to pre-pandemic levels, it's probably going to take a while. That being said, this is a very exciting time for people to get into our business. And I can see why your collections would be less than ours, because of the cultural mindset of the ownership in it, the investment in it for them psychologically and monetarily is greater. But certainly, I was talking to one of our interns the other day who was talking to me about, shall I go into corporate after this? I really want to stay working in this business. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to own my own properties. And my suggestion to him, going back to TAA, and I know I'm kind of all over the place on this answer, but my suggestion to him was, do stay with us. Very soon, you're probably going to see some amazing opportunities come your way. And if you want to get the corporate experience, join the apartment association. And you've got your bases covered with all of that. I said, but if I was you, looking back, this is probably the most exciting time to be in this business. This is kind of like, or possibly, and I don't have a crystal ball, like a 1991 that's coming up. And I don't know if it's going to go there, but preparing for that right now and hoping that and expecting it's going to happen. I don't want any suffering to happen, but this is a really exciting time to get involved. Maybe the best time we've ever seen.
I want to reiterate what Mark said. No one's wishing anyone to have any suffering. That's not the point, but it's going to happen whether we like it or not. We didn't cause it. Mark didn't cause it. I didn't cause it. But wealth comes from chaos. And I borrowed that from an anonymous source. I'm trying to find out who said that, but they don't really know. I've borrowed it. I've written that in the cover of my first book every time I had to sign it for people. And wealth comes from chaos, and there's going to be some chaos from this. And competition is dropping like flies. And then right around the corner, I predict we're going to see the results of this, and it's going to be manifested in lower prices in distressed properties, right? And from people who didn't manage well or didn't plan well or weren't ready or just got hit really hard, unfortunately. And we are going to see opportunities. You know, during the last recession, I was buying a house a day because I functioned primarily off of private money, and I didn't need a bank to buy my houses. For 45 days in a row, I bought houses. And the problem was I didn't have a system at the time, and I was the house buyer and the house seller. And so by the time I looked up and I had 45 vacant houses, because when you're buying a house a day, you don't have time to sell one. And I got scared and stopped. I have since solved that problem by learning how to delegate and systematize. So let me ask Mark, how many people around you does it take to facilitate you?
How do you mean by that? My wife, my mother, you know.
Do you have any personal assistants that just, I don't know, what they used to call them Girl Fridays or whatever, you know, someone who was just like, I need my dry cleaning, I need you to file my tax return, drop it off at the deal, and I need you to, you know, so it's like all over the map, whatever you need, you know, Mother's Day's coming up, make sure, you know, I got flowers on the table.
I don't have any personal assistants. I never have. That may not be wise, you know, and I've often been told that I probably should but I haven't. We have a company, you know, our Texas company has about 100 it's down to about 100 people right now, not because of this, but because we just got more efficient. We use a lot of contractors for our labor, and they're not, you know, they'd be handy people off of Craigslist and yeah, that's a whole other system that we've developed over the years to get our work done efficiently and less expensively. But I can call on any of those people, and we try to do a flat management thing, you know, and with Zoom, which we were using, and Hangouts for quite a long time before this, I can speak to any of our managers at any time, and I can ask them to do anything. So the answer to your question is I don't have any of that. I probably would be wise to. My son is working at Trinity and is now one of our interns, going to school at Trinity, and is now one of our interns. And during coronavirus, he's been in the house with me here, and I've been using him to a certain extent as an assistant.
What a lucky kid! What a lucky young man to be able to be mentored in that way.
He probably doesn't think so.
Of course not. Of course not. You know, there's other people who would give their right arm to like be locked up in a house with you for a half a year, you know, so that they could figure out what's in your head. But so what are some of you've got such a big life and so much to do. You're obviously a master delegator, but what are some of the rules that guide you?
So some of the rules that...
Yeah, what are the rules that guide you?
Well, you know, the small consistent growth has been one of them. We never go too far. We try to buy, you know, we have a return that we expect, and we try not to buy below that return. It was very tempting in recent years to want to buy no matter what the price, especially when you've got cash sitting on the sidelines. And I'm very glad now that we didn't, and we waited. We did keep growing a little bit just to satisfy the hunger. But we try to stay out of debt. You know, we started very debt laden, and you know, we were offered very good debt terms when we first started buying in 94, 95. And we paid off most of that debt very quickly. So we have a little bit of debt now, but we're probably about 1% leveraged at the moment. Obviously, and I've lost sound with you a little bit, Mitch, but can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good.
Oh, yeah, sorry. But you know, obviously that's not how we start out, but we always kept debt fairly low. You know, we never went too far with it, and then we got out of it as quickly as we possible, and then it becomes a virtuous cycle. We try to buy services in bulk. for our residents and then charge them the cost that we paid. So we might buy Wi-Fi for every resident in an apartment community, pay $10 for it and only charge them the 10, but know that we've created value for them because they would have paid $80 for it by themselves. So wherever we can do that, we do. We try to pay our vendors very quickly. You know, all our contractors get paid the day they finish the job. They get paid. We'll treat them as we would a valued customer, because we want them to finish quickly. We try to have a 4-day turnaround on our units, because I think the biggest impediment in Texas for the past few decades has been how quickly you can get the unit ready to rent to somebody, not whether there are people out there to rent it. Renting to, you know, we spend a lot of time, even though we deal with people that others may not think deserve the highest level of customer service, because we deal with poorer people. You know, we try to get all our people focused on yes. And I could go on and on and on, but I would say having the right people around you is one of the most important things there is. We do only 4-day work weeks with our employees because we want them to be rested. We want them to spend time with their families, and we want to have a very select group of people that we work with. And we pay them for 5 days, even though they only work the 4. That may sound insane, especially in our business, but we see a lot more productivity happen because of that. And we see a much happier environment with employees who retain their customers, because turnover is one of the biggest costs that in my business we see. And I'll stop there with.
I love your outlook on the employees in the 4-day work week and paying them for 5. I mean, that keeps people around, because turnover inside your business is hard too, because people, you train them and they finally get to know how to run everything in the culture that you want. And then when they leave, it's exasperating to have to train over and over again. So do you have a pretty sticky employee base? I mean, they stay for a long time?
Yes, we have people that have been with us for the whole 25 years. And on that note, you know, I remember, you know, I used to read, coming out of college, do your interviews, do them, you know, stick to 45 minutes and have a list. And then I'd see my dad do an interview with somebody for 2 to 3 hours when he was interviewing people. And I thought that was insane. And I thought, aha, you know, I know something you don't know. And then, you know, talking to him a little bit about it, he was like, hey, I can spend 2 hours with them now, or I could spend 40 hours dealing with a bad employee later, you know, and that has come to make a lot of sense to me. So he really, you know, used to be very selective.
You know, I learned just screening our prospective buyers to ask 10 or 15 questions that have nothing to do with the deal or the house or anything, just to get them talking, because you could learn about a person just by what they're telling you about their regular life. And it's been very invaluable. That's one of the keys to our interviewing process, to figure out who we want to select as a person that we're going to give a 30-year mortgage to, is just to get them talking. People will tell you the dangest things if you just get them comfortable, you know? And sometimes the dangest works in their favor, and sometimes it's like, hell no, you know, it ain't going to work at all. I don't even want to be, you know, in the same block as this person. But some of the things they tell you is unbelievable. Man, I could talk to you probably for a week straight and never finish. One of the reasons I do this podcast is the same reason that you have chosen to take on the weight of a presidential seat at the Texas Apartment Association, is I get to talk and to be around really successful people all over the nation. And believe me, I learn a lot. And you're just another fine example of why I like to do this podcast, because what's the chances of us being able to sit down like this? If we didn't have a common friend, you know, together, I probably never would have get to talk to you ever, because your schedule would be so packed. So what are some of the takeaways before we wrap it up? You know?
Well, first of all, I'll say, what you're doing with your questions to your buyers is in asking them seemingly unrelated questions is exactly what my dad did. And I'm not surprised that you do it. And absolutely, I agree with you, having hundreds of people, thousands of people that do what you do, and having those opportunities to learn, it's like having hundreds and thousands of teachers. It's an amazing way to learn. I learn a lot every time I talk to you as well, Mitch. And I've so appreciated getting to know you. It's definitely expanded my thinking. And some of the takeaways, I would say, I'd go with what my dad said, which is, and these are mostly my dad's lessons to me, I'd say they're all my dad's lessons to me. Make a small profit on a unit and do that many times over. Small, consistent growth is the best way to do it. As Albert Einstein said, compound interest is the greatest force in the universe. Run lean. We really watch our expenses very, very carefully. I mean, we're going through them again right now as we build cash for what we expect might be coming. Work hard, and that's necessary to become successful. We've kept our debt very down to no debt or very limited amount of debts, or play it as safe as you can. That doesn't mean take on no debt, but don't do what a lot of other people that I'm seeing that are sweating like crazy out there right now are doing, or have done. And always be improving. Surround yourself with those hundreds and thousands of teachers that you can learn from and learn on a daily basis.
You left out one, and I know it belongs on there because I know you, and I know your story, and I know your dad's story, but you operate at a very high level of integrity too. I can tell everyone out there, but you just take it, it's so natural to you that you don't even think to write it down. But you've got to stay in the high integral level because it takes years to build the reputation. It takes a day to ruin it. And I know that because I've talked to you before. You're straight up guy. You don't fudge anything. You're right by the book. You take care of people and you treat them how you want to, how you would like to be treated. And I really admire that about you. It's so easy to get jaded in the low income rental business because, they can really wear you out. And how do you keep from getting worn out? Or how do you insulate yourself from some of that?
I agree with you completely on the integrity. Reputation has great value, even if it's not about you in terms of how you can do well in business because of it. How do I not get? Sometimes it's hard. We do customer service focus groups with our residents, and sometimes we walk out of there shaking our head with some of them. But then again, there are some amazing people amongst them as well. The vast majority of them are probably amazing people. I try not to think about it too much, Well,
I'll tell you how I did it. I had to get someone in between me and them because to you and me, that's our money. That's our house. You just punched a hole in the wall and, it can get emotional. If you get like a manager in between them, it's not... How do you say it without, I don't want to degrade the manager, but they just can't have as much fervor as I do because it's not their piece of sheetrock, it was my piece of sheetrock. So I had to put some people in between and say, just call me when the problem gets to this level. And then I don't even want to know their names or what unit. I'll just tell you how to handle it and then go over there and fix it, So I had to, after a while, and I didn't have not even remotely as close to the level you did, but that's how I ended up having to do it. I still have to do it to this day. But that's a good point. I do actually have a general manager whose name is Mike Rust, and I have another sort of development guy who gets involved a lot. His name is Corky Wolf. And life has gotten a lot better for me since, and it's a lot easier not to get jaded. Because they're there taking on those issues. Yeah. So, man, I would really like to thank you for taking the time to come on. You're a busy guy, and I don't want to drag you through the rest of the day, although I could very easily talk to you forever. I'd like to thank all the listeners out there for stopping by to get you some Mark Hurley, president of the Texas Apartment Association, the longest running president ever due to COVID. He extended his time, which I'm sure he's ecstatic about.
Yeah.
So happy to serve everyone. I'd like to thank taxfreefuture.com for sponsoring us. you have no idea what your financial advisors are not telling you, please go to taxfreefuture.com, watch the 37 little video vignettes and hear what they're not telling you, why they're not telling you, and then you can do with it what you want. All right, Mark, thank you so much for your valuable time. I really, really, really appreciate you.
Mitch, thank you. It was an honor, a pleasure, my friend, as always, and talk to you soon.